It's the Congleton Eco Show, and on this edition, we're down at the Congleton Green Fayre. Now we've got Glenn Williams with us, and you're here on behalf of the...
Today, Friends of Congleton Park, but also a number of organisations that I'm involved in that has an emphasis on the green agenda and the environment are here today, so I'm helping out on those stalls as well.
So you're on more than one stall?
Effectively, yes.
How many are you running today?
Well, I can only probably take credit for running one specific stall, which is the Friends of Congleton Park, but I'm involved with Trees for Congleton, with Plastic Free Congleton, the Old Sawmill and its apple juice campaign, Congleton in Bloom, and there's probably one or two others that I haven't even managed to get round to yet.
Why do you think things like this Green Fayre, why do you think they're so important?
Well, for me, it's about raising the awareness, but done in a very friendly, sociable, community feel way. And it gives an opportunity for residents, not just from Congleton, but from outside of the town, an opportunity to come and experience and find out information in a way that isn't high pressure. You know, it's very community, family friendly type environment that we've got today.
I mean, you're in all these groups, on these committees with eco stuff. It's a wonder they don't start calling you Mr. Eco, isn't it?
Oh, I think there's other people in the town that you could give that title and label to. For me, if you can get involved and make even a small difference, then that's important. And if you can bring different organisations together, whether they have an environmental focus or not, actually working together, you can make a much bigger difference. And the important thing is taking the public with you, not forcing the public to change. It's giving them different options and different information so they can make better informed choices of how they live their life, still have good quality of life, but having less of a negative impact on the environment. And that could be something very simple to, one day a week not eating meat, or helping to plant a tree, or, donating some apples to the Old Sawmill for the apple juice project. It's those little things that actually collectively, if we all make that change, will make the big differences.
Now, with Trees for Congleton, you always get some people, not too many, but there is always some that they have a little bit of a moan that you're planting trees willy-nilly. So what do you say to those people?
Get involved. Come and actually join in. Consultation has taken place on every single site where trees and hedgerows have been planted over the last 2 or 3 years as part of the Trees for Congleton initiative. Not everyone's going to agree, which is fine. Every scheme that we've offered and promoted to the community, every scheme that the original plans have always changed, whether that's more trees, less trees, different types of trees in a slightly different location within that overall area. But actually, you need to understand what the wider benefits are. It's not just about, making the environment look good. It's not just about carbon capture. It's about, extending and improving the wildlife as a whole. It's also about actually getting the community involved in something practical that they can do. Whilst there are people who object, some of those objections are fair and reasonable. Some of them, unfortunately, I would disagree that they are fair and reasonable. They're quite emotive and not based on fact. But you tell me that, of the thousands of trees that we've planted through that initiative so far in Congleton, hundreds of people have got involved, from people who go to nursery or primary school or high school to people who, are in the 70s and 80s. It brings, the community together, it brings generations together, and collectively we're making a difference.
And you're involved with Plastic Free Congleton as well?
Yeah, Plastic Free Congleton is another great initiative. You know, it's not just about what that scheme had to go through to get that status. It's about raising awareness and finding different ways of reducing the material that you use in the first place. But if you do need to have plastic, and every one of us uses plastic in some form, you know, but making those small steps, those incremental steps, and getting the support of the public to do that, then you have less plastic waste in the environment that obviously has a very negative impact for a very long time.
And you also run, is it the allotments on Bromley Farm? So that's keeping things.
We have 20 allotment plots on Hillary Avenue, which are a town council asset, fantastic town council asset, run very successfully for nearly 15 years by the Hillary Avenue Allotment Association. And as part of those plots, Bromley Farm Community Development Trust has what we badge as a community plot. And what's behind that predominantly is getting young people involved and learning about how to grow a lettuce or a cabbage or a crop of potatoes. And whilst the last few years, because of COVID and other factors, they haven't been as prolific in terms of the produce that we've produced compared to the first few years that we had that plot. Actually, we've got some really exciting plans for 2023, which will involve a lot more residents actually getting their hands and fingers dirty and producing a lot more crops, which in this supposedly cost of living crisis, actually demonstrating to people that it is easy to grow your own food. It's very cheap to grow your own food. You know what's going into it. And any excess produce from that project, particularly next year, because we've now got a polytunnel on the allotment plot, that we'll be able, as we did in the first few years, to give any excess to local residents who need that.
Well, it's been wonderful hearing what you're up to and all the things you're involved in. Thanks for talking to Congleton Radio.
It's amazing the diversity that you find at Congleton's Green Fayres. You never know who you're going to be talking to. 1 minute you could be talking about plants, and the next minute you could be talking to an experienced beekeeper.
So, we're still down at the Eco Fair, and we've got the Cheshire Beekeepers Association. Have I got that right?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
Well, I've got one thing right today at least. Anyway, so bees, people, they give them bad press, don't they? They say they're one step off wasps, but really, without bees and without insects, we've no planet.
Well, that's correct, yeah, and I think a lot of people are coming round to that idea. We have, as beekeepers, have noticed a big change. It happened very suddenly as well. About 10 years ago, there was a lot of publicity, as everybody will remember, about bees, this saying that's attributed to Einstein that if bees disappear, human beings will disappear 4 years later. We'll have 4 years left to survive. So there was lots of publicity then, and attitudes generally changed quite quickly and quite pronouncedly. So I find that most people are very positive about bees nowadays. They might be slightly frightened of them. They know that bees sting, but they're very positive about bees. But still, there's a lot of ignorance around, quite understandable. There's no reason why everybody should be an expert about bees. One thing that we find ourselves impressing upon people nowadays is that honeybees, which is what beekeepers keep, they are the only species of bee that makes honey, hence the name, honeybee. They are only one of 250 different species of bee in the United Kingdom alone. But worldwide, there are about 25,000 species of bee, different species, that is. So when we talk about the bees, we ought to think more widely than just honeybees. And we are no longer trying to persuade people to take up beekeeping. 10 years ago, we were trying to do that because the number of beekeepers in the UK had reached an all-time low. I think the membership of the British Beekeepers Association, so that's our national organisation, had gone down to about 8,000 10 years ago. It's now over 25,000. So we don't feel the need to recruit beekeepers anymore. If anybody wants to take up beekeeping, we are there to help, obviously with advice, with training and with practical support. But we're not actively trying to persuade people to take up beekeeping. And what we tell people is you do not have to be a beekeeper to protect the bees. You can do a lot to help these other species of bee by what you do in your garden, by providing habitat for the solitary bees, for example, for bumblebees in your garden or around it, and for planting the right sort of flowers that'll feed these other kinds of bee and other pollinators, of course. We shouldn't just stop at bees. We should think about other insects, butterflies, wasps, hoverflies. They all do pollination work. Wasps will rid your garden of a lot of aphids and pests. So they're all beneficial insects that even though, particularly at this time of year, in the early autumn, wasps become quite a menace, quite a nuisance when you're trying to have a picnic outside or a barbecue. But, we shouldn't allow our annoyance about things disrupting our activities to lead us to become totally anti. So even wasps are beneficial insects, and they're quite magnificent creatures in terms of what they do as well. We have mixed feelings as beekeepers about wasps because wasps can be quite vicious, and they can actually wipe out a hive or a nest of honeybees if they set their minds to it. So we have to protect our bees against wasps, but that doesn't mean that we want to kill wasps or get rid of them. We still, we should learn to live with other creatures rather than always treating our interests as being the deciding factor.
Now, if somebody wants to find out more of what you're doing and what you stand for, where can they go? Is this somewhere on the internet, a website?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, as usual, we've stopped handing out leaflets actually because we just refer people to the website. If you just Google bees or beekeeping. The Cheshire Beekeepers Association is the local association, and the Cheshire Beekeepers Association has 5 branches in the north, south, east and west and middle of Cheshire. So if round here in Congleton, it's the South Cheshire Beekeepers Association, or Beekeepers Branch, I should say. So if you just Google South Cheshire Beekeepers, you'll find our website. And there are details of our meetings and training events and public events on there.
What advice could you give to listeners now who they don't want to go keeping bees, but they just want to do their bit to help them and other insects? What would you say they could go out and do today that could help in that regard?
Yeah, well, that is the question. As I said at the beginning, you don't have to take up beekeeping, which is good news, I think, for a lot of people, in order to do something for the bees. On our website and on the internet everywhere nowadays, you'll find lists of plants for bees or plants for pollinators. You've probably got some of those in your garden already, but you can certainly grow more. You can buy some seeds. You can buy them. You can get them free here today in Congleton. Wildflower meadow seeds that you can just spray down in your garden in a neglected corner. Some of them at least will germinate, and then you're providing something to feed the pollinating insects. As I said, the other thing you can do is to buy one of these bee houses with little holes for solitary bees. Most of the bees, I was talking about 250 different species, most of those are solitary bees, which means that the females make a nest on their own. They might nest together, so you might see the odd dozen or a couple of dozen solitary bees nesting in the vicinity of each other, but they are actually essentially solitary, and that means that they're very vulnerable. They're very vulnerable to habitat loss, to forage loss, to pesticides, all the sort of things that's going on nowadays. So those are the sort of bees that you can help, as I say, by planting the right sort of flowers and by providing little bee houses hanging in your garden somewhere where they can make their nests.
Well, we've got some good news for you here because we've got plenty of them in our back garden. And we encourage other people to go out and do the same. So it's been great talking to you, and thanks for coming on Congleton Radio.
Right, thank you for your time.
The Green Fayre in Congleton is always a brilliant occasion. It brings people together and makes people more mindful about the environment. The 2022 Green Fayre was just as exceptional as all the others. In fact, each year, this event keeps growing from strength to strength.
So we're still at the Green Fayre, and now I'm with
Richard McCarthy from the Green Party.
So what do you make of all this then, Richard?
Well, it's brilliant that people are thinking about green things, and the Green Fayre is to get people more encouraged in everything. Obviously, it's always used by people to make money, and that's absolutely fine, as long as we're not making money by producing more. So a bit along the lines of the government's push for expand, we've got to realise that we can't just expand, and it's our expansion that's done all the damage to the planet that we've done at the moment.
I suppose it's important because it's about getting the message out and across to people, and that's what you're doing here today.
Yeah, that's right. So our message is really there are other parties that's not just Conservative and Labour. There are other parties in existence, and if you don't want to vote for any other those particular parties, think again. Think of a different party. A lot of people think there's no point in voting, particularly for the Green Party, say, and we would say, well, no, that if you vote Green. Other parties who see that Greens have become more and more popular, suddenly they have to greenify themselves, and of course they frequently don't follow through, but at least they start thinking about things and they started talking the right talk. But if you want people who'll walk the walk afterwards, then I would suggest people vote Green.
I mean, that's the thing. I hear people and they say if you vote the Green Party, it's just a protest vote. Well, it can be more than just a protest vote because, like you've said there, you can bring change in because the other parties will have to adopt it because they want to be seen as popular.
Absolutely, and we only have one MP at the moment, but we've got. I'm sorry, I don't know, but we have something like an enormous number of people. We have a number of councils who are green councils, and those councils are actually making change within the councils. So we're making change locally, but the way that the government is done in this country, and particularly after the last 10 years or so, everything is at the top. So the real change needs to happen on the MP level and the government level, but you can still obviously vote Green in local elections, and that's been making changes all over the country. But to make the big change, you go up a scale and vote Green there as well.
So is there going to be a Green Party member for Congleton Town Council or Cheshire East? Is that where you're going for next year at the elections?
Yeah, certainly. We've got. I'm standing. Well, if we have an election fairly quickly, it would be me standing for Cheshire East. We've got Lisa Miller here, who would be standing for Congleton Town Council and for Cheshire East Council as well. And we've got other councillors all around Cheshire East for people to vote for as well.
So could you share some of your policies with us now?
National policies or local policies?
I'll take anything, I'm easy.
Well, okay, you've stumped me there. For local policies, other than we would definitely say no to fracking. We would not be building any more roads. We would not in Cheshire East. We would not be allowing building to happen on Danes Moss. We would be enacting things to improve air quality. In fact, something very soon will be coming through about air quality, which the Green Party is trying to put in place. All of these require a lot of work on the local level, so we'd be behind all of those. On a more national scale, we wouldn't be for nuclear power. We would be for an awful lot more renewables. and we would be then, with the excess energy that you get from renewables when the wind blows at night and not many people are using electricity, we'd then be turning it into green hydrogen that we can store over for seasonal storage. Strangely enough, it's the summer that we need the seasonal storage for. Most people think it's in the winter when there'll be a problem, but we don't have a problem in the winter. It's more likely in the summer.
Now, I believe you've got a podcast as well. Do you want to give that a plug?
Oh, right, yeah. Our podcast, well, personal podcast, my wife and I, it's called Dithering on the Edge of Europe. So I'd love people to have a listen to it. So we did that 2 or 3 years ago because of Brexit, and we realised that nobody got to hear in detail anything about Europe and why we were leaving it and why we shouldn't leave it. So we tried to make a podcast along those lines.
And is that available for more like the normal podcast places?
Absolutely. Any good podcast will have it. So my wife is very good about making sure it got everywhere. So it's there.
Now, if somebody wants to learn more about the Green Party at a local level, where can they go to? Have you got a Facebook page, anything like that, or website?
Yeah, we've got a Facebook page, a website page. We do have a Twitter account, various other social media accounts, I think. So, yeah, we're trying to grow. We're trying to be a bit more energetic about putting the message out there. The Green Party is very much a party about policy and about democratic discussion of the policy. So we have a couple of conferences every year, and we can't change policy unless policy is changed at the conference and voted on fully and so on. So we are policy driven, and I think that's one of the really huge benefits of the Green Party, that we look at everything very in tedious detail before it actually becomes the policy of the party.
Do you ever think that we'll see the Green Party in any type of power in this country? Do you think, serious change needs to come in before we could see a smaller party in power?
Well, obviously we'd have to be a bigger party if we were actually in power, but yes, I mean, definitely we could be there. We do need to see that a change in the voting system. People say that we have the mother of all parliaments. I would say that we've got the great-great-great-grandfather or grandmother who've lost their teeth, they're blind and they're stooped and they can barely walk of parliaments. We need to update our form of democracy because it's terrible at the moment, as I think an awful lot of people across the country would testify to. And that's why we've had such a big... That's one of the big causes of Brexit, I think, was not that people hated the EU, it was the fact that they felt they weren't being listened to. And they weren't being listened to because of our parliamentary system. And if we actually did have proportional voting, then obviously even the big parties would have to be trying to do things for the vote of the people in their area, and that would make them listen to the public more. And the public would feel more listened to, and the whole Brexit wouldn't have happened, I would suggest.
That's it. I mean, like you said, that's how you would become from a small party to a bigger party, because if you've got people running in all them seats and you get over the line, well, then you're in power.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we had nearly 1 million votes for Greens in the last general election, but only one MP. Whereas other parties were getting people in, on average, they were getting a person in with 40,000 votes. So, if we were getting them in for 40,000, we'd have about 20 MPs now. So, as soon as that change happened, then certainly we'd get more people in, and other parties would as well. And it's just wrong to have a system where two main parties can run everything with a minority of votes and a minority of people supporting them. In actual fact, you could say that most people voted against the government for the last 50 years. Most people voted against the government, but the government was in power and could do what they wanted. So again and again, it just proves that first past the post is the worst system that we could use.
Well, thanks a lot for talking to Congleton Radio today.
Thank you very much.
Now we've got a Congleton legend with us. A true legend, Olga Whitmore.
No. Oh, hello. I'd like to talk about green agenda really, because there's no way we can live in a situation like we do. So I suggest we look at what we can do and join Green Party.
So, I mean, you are known as someone that's eco-friendly and always pushing green issues. You go above and beyond, don't you, Olga?
Well, green is not enough, because look there, everything's green, but green is not enough because it's not biodiverse. There's grass there. There is nothing for wildlife there, and a lot of areas like that. So green is not enough. So you need to make the areas biodiverse, more wildlife friendly. And the way to do it, you need to educate people, yeah? And that's a job of the town council, of each of us who have got a little bit of knowledge. You can share the plants. That's why you have got this Congleton Plant Swap and Gardening for Wildlife, which is a Facebook group, but in reality a real group. So people bring plants, and they bring the plants, they either want to share with the other people, or they will come there and to swap plants for the plants they see.
Now, like I said, you really do push the eco issue. You've been there, you've held people to account, and sometimes people get upset with that, don't they?
Well, they do get upset, but they should realize that we have got a green forest streetscape which costs you and me $500,000. So for $500,000, I'm sure we can deliver something better than baskets and bedding plants.
So if you were in charge of the council, what would you change, Olga? What would you do? What would you do if someone said to you, you're the boss?
Well,
what would you do from day one?
I'll just abolish all bedding plants. It should be all perennials. All the gardens should be perennial plants. They're still colorful, they're still beautiful. Less maintenance, more environmentally friendly. We don't have to buy them. They're not green plastic. You never throw them away. And you don't need to buy plants which are raised in peat. That's the only thing we can do, first one. Then we should maintain the land according to the wildlife principles, like hedge cutting, so-called grass cutting, less grass. We don't need to have grass. We can have wild areas everywhere. We can plant perennials. For example, this area there, it could be wild clover. Once you planted wild clover, you don't need to cut it.
So, there you have it. We spoke to Olga.
Thanks
for talking to Congleton Radio.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you.
Now, how often do you find a cordon bleu chef? I hope I've said that right, because I always get that wrong. I've got that right, haven't I?
Yeah. Not very often.
Now, how often do you find a vegan one? Well, we've got one here with us today. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Diana. I live in Congleton. I, a long time ago, trained at the Cordon Bleu School in London. And I've always been interested in food and cooking. And 4 years ago, I decided to change my diet to plant-based. So I'm able to apply my cooking skills to my food at home. And I make mostly everything.
So what is it you do? It must be something exotic. Go on, impress the listeners.
I wouldn't say they're exotic, but I do use a lot of herbs and spices. I grow fresh herbs. I have a tray of herbs and spices on my worktop in my kitchen, and most things have a sprinkling of various tasty additions added. So today, before I came out, I've made a mix ready for falafels or chickpea burgers, as I call them, which are just burger-shaped falafels ready to do for dinner tonight.
I mean, the most vegan thing that I could probably do is beans on toast without the butter. So,
well, I'll tell you a story. Called to see my parents one day and they had nothing vegan to eat. And he said to me, well, what are you going to have? I said, well, have you got beans? He said, yeah, I've got beans. I said, well, I have beans on toast. And all I did was add a little bit of spice to the beans and a green salad. And so I had spicy baked beans on toast, but he was insistent I couldn't just have beans. I said, I'm fine, I have beans all the time. So, you can even turn a tin of baked beans into something a little bit more exotic.
That's it. It's about working with what you got and just putting a little bit of a twist on it. But I'm sure there's some really fancy meals that you can come up with. Is there any more that you want to plug?
I make all sorts of different things. This week I've made a Moroccan chickpea casserole, which you basically use. You look up a meat version of the recipe, you see what herbs and spices are in it, and instead of the meat, I add beans. Chickpeas, lentils, black-eyed beans, all sorts of things. And it's not difficult when you take the basic ingredients of a recipe and apply that to a vegan dish. I don't find it difficult.
Well, thanks a lot for talking to Congleton Radio. Now, we're talking to a gentleman at the Eco Fair. Do you want to introduce yourself and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Richard Marlowe from Arriva Renewables. We specialise in energy conservation, and then if we can get that right, we then look at renewables energy generation.
So it's quite a lot of eco stuff you're involved with.
Yeah. I've been in this game for about 11 years now. I moved from just general building and then moving into more sustainable building approach. And first of all, we focus on getting buildings more airtight and well insulated. And if we can get them really well insulated and that airtightness gets to a really, really low result, then the renewables like heat pumps and solar work really well. Yes, we were very reluctant to actually put in renewables in leaky buildings because it doesn't really work very well.
What have you got with regards in solar that could heat the house? Because I didn't think they had that yet. Can you do that now?
Well, the solar energy, mainly in a domestic house, we're looking at putting a 5 kilowatt array in, and that energy can do all the lighting, but it struggles with high resistive loads, which is like heating. But it's possible with what's called a solar diverter, and there's a model on the market called an eddy. Once all your batteries and your solar is doing its work in the house, then you can actually divert that energy, because most of the time during in the summertime you've charged your batteries up by about midday, and then you can actually divert that energy into your immersion heater. So for the rest of the day until at dusk, your hot water can be produced by the solar PV. So then you're not actually feeding that energy back into the grid because there's no feed-in tariff anymore. You actually use that energy to heat your hot water, and we're working on schemes where for about 7 months of the year the hot water is produced by the PV, and there's quite a lot of devices on the market which are called solar diverters, and they do that job.
Are they very expensive?
They're between about £400 and £500, but not that much to install. But with the cost of electricity now, it pays back, dividends very quickly, one of those devices. Yeah.
So basically, if someone's just got, I don't know, a normal council house, semi-detached, they could just have this equipment installed.
Well, you do need the solar array to begin with, okay? And now on a household, you're looking for 16 solar panels to produce around about 5 kilowatts. You can pay somewhere between £8,000 and £13,000 for a solar array, and then this is just an additional device which goes on to that system, okay?
So if someone wants to find out more about this, is there a website that you've got that they can look at?
Yes, our website is www.arriva-renewables.co.uk. Yeah, we mainly work in the Cheshire area, focusing around Congleton and Macclesfield area. Yeah.
Thanks a lot for talking to Congleton Radio.
Thank you.
Now we're with Barry, and he's got the air quality stand. How are you, Barry?
I'm doing good, thanks.
I was going to say what's all this about, but I should imagine it's about air quality.
Yeah, we're trying to take measurements of air quality around Congleton, comparing that with what Cheshire East finds on their own monitors, and trying to raise awareness of the problems of air quality.
Would you say there's a lot of air quality problems in Congleton?
Thankfully, not compared to the big cities, but still people need to be aware. If you're driving a lot, if you take your children to school along a busy road, or if you're in an area of the town where people are burning coal or wood, you need to be aware that there are air quality problems.
Now, have you got a website where people can see what you're doing?
No, we're not that advanced, I'm afraid.
But how can they get involved with air quality issues?
If they want to come and join our little team, they can email me, make contact, and I'll put them in touch and lend them equipment, for example. If they want to get involved, we can do it that way.
Can you share your email on the radio?
Yeah, for sure. That's my card, so you can read that out, or I'll read it out.
And that's Barry. Is that
Speed.
Barry.speed at techservice.co.uk.
Yeah, and tech service spelled TEK.
Thanks for talking to Congleton Radio, Barry.
No problem.
I hope you've enjoyed this edition of the Congleton Eco Show, and I hope you join in for the next edition. And let's look forward to the next Green Fayre in 2023.